Hey everyone, it's your buddy Josh, here to break down one of my favorite all-time stories. This happened with a friend of mine and I at the San Antonio Zoo. Truly one of the most remarkable 20 minutes of my life. By the way, I'm just going to get ahead of it and apologize for how tight those pants are. My buddy and I were drunk at the zoo. And we were there near closing time. It was like around 6 or 7. We were hammered. We're walking around. We're making fun of animals and shit. And we get to the rhino pen. By the way, this is one of those stories that I've for whatever reason, very rarely told or tell on stage. And my buddy goes, "Look at that! I go, it's crazy how big that thing is, right?" And he goes, "It's weird that they're scared of people, right?" And I go, and I said, "No. This animal has a sword on its face." This is one of those punchlines that I had told it a couple times and realized that was a good spot timing-wise, and it needed a little bit of a laugh. When you're telling a story like this, I would say any story, every joke doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10. You want to keep the story going. And a story can't ride at 10 the whole time. It gets people exhausted. A good story has peaks and valleys, in my mind. But sometimes even in the valley of when you're just talking or in the middle of the story, it just needs a ha ha ha. I'll tell you something else. At the end of a long silence, if you time it right, you're going to get the biggest laugh. It breaks the tension. But in this little spot, I remember telling this a couple times on stage and thinking to myself, hey, the next time you tell this is a good spot for a joke. And this just came to me one night on stage about the sword on its face. Is it the best joke in the world? No, but this spot in the story, it didn't need to be. It just needs to be a little entertaining. They don't make you with a sword on your face if you're scared of people, you know what I mean? He goes, no, they're like cows, they run away from people. I go, no. And he says to me, $20 so that I don't jump in the pen with a rhino. By the way, I want you guys to know, so far, 100% true. This, 100% true. Him jumping in that pen with the rhino. 100% true that he only wanted $20. 100% true. He's a heart surgeon now, by the way. In college, in the 90s, $20 is 10 beers. That's a lot. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, $20? You don't jump in the pen? He goes, $20. And he goes, 20 more bucks if I touch it on the ass. I said, deal. Now the pen, this rhino's name was Lord. And it was a long rectangular pen. These are some choices that I make, guys, that other people don't. And this is stylistically just for me. I like you to have a mental image of where you are in the world. I like you to be at the zoo with me. I could have just said he jumped in the pen, right? But I like you to be invested. And I feel like the more information you have, the more I can paint the picture for you. I remember early on as a comic telling stories where I had older guys be like, get to it. You get rid of this. You don't need it. And I did. And I remember being on stage thinking this doesn't feel right. They're not invested. They're not there with me. And I think details put you there with me, which is why my stories, man, are some of them are 15, 20 minutes, right? Because I'm adding things into these stories that I think are important for you to enjoy them. It was at the end of the pen behind a wooden fence, and there was a fence and it had an opening big enough for the rhino to get out, right? So now this dude, he was wearing jeans tighter than mine. He jumps in wearing these Wranglers, he's got cowboy boots on, he's like this little 5'6" dude from West Texas. His name is John. By the way, he is now a heart surgeon. See, now, this is one of the reasons that I don't like to watch myself and I like to listen. And this is just me being hypercritical. My motion on stage is a little too erratic right here. I stepped sideways, I stepped back. It's not how I would tell a story to somebody in my living room. And so I don't mind the slow movements or the back and forth, but that felt erratic to me. And so in that moment, what that tells me is I'm not as comfortable. And interesting. I wonder what that is at that spot. Why?
Now, the rhino pen the walls are cement walls. It's not like there's steps up and down. So he grabs on the side and he just lets go and he drops in. I bet you the wall's probably 9.5, 10 feet. Maybe a little less, maybe 8. And so he starts to walk up to the rhino. And it's at the end of the long pen, probably the end of this clip, probably. And he's walking up to me, and he's turning to me, so he'll turn around and he's doing something like this. And the rhino's not moving. And for a second I was like, do I not know what rhinos do? Right? Like, why isn't this rhino sticking his horn up this dude's asshole? This is what we're paying the money for, you know what I mean?
I wish I didn't say you know what I mean as much as I do. I've heard it a couple times, and it feels like I'm asking for validation. At first, when I first started doing it, I'm gonna have to think about that. Because when I first started doing it, I was looking for, remember I told you guys I really want to address everybody as friends. And I've made it way more informal. I think a couple of them is okay, but I think the more I say you know what I mean, the more it feels like I'm asking you for permission. And I just want to tell the story. It's interesting. Again, never watched this. And I don't think I've ever listened to this story either, because it's not a story that I generally tell on stage. This is such a good example of my stand-up. Guys, there are so many jokes. There's probably almost 2 specials worth of jokes that I have never put in specials that I just put out for you guys. This being a good example. There's a couple of that. Me jumping off the Space Needle, never been in a special. It's 17 minutes. And so this is a good example of that. And that's why I've never seen it or really listened to it.
He's getting closer and closer with not a care in the world. I'm like, what is happening? He probably got within, it feels like 15 feet. And the rhino just looked at him and let out this noise. I'd never heard a noise like that before in my life, dude. When he I was like, oh, that's what a real animal sounds like. Just Thank you. And my buddy turned to me.
There's no reason to break up the flow of your joke to get into the dude making a Chewbacca noise. It was fine. People laughed at it, but you don't have to really respond to everything. If you do, you're taking the bait and you're inviting other people to make Chewbacca noises or other noises or anything like that, right? And this was just one of those times where I couldn't not acknowledge it because everybody heard and a bunch of people laughed, but I didn't want to get into it and break up the flow of the joke.
And I was like, there's the fear I'm looking for. This dude straight up realized, oh, I made a big mistake. And the rhino turns, and it's not that nimble, right? But when it gets out the hole, yo, I'll tell you something right now, rhinos are faster than I thought they were. This thing, and it's got those little tiny legs. I'm like, how is it moving so fast? Yeah. You know, and so it's and my buddy's just, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be close.
This is one of those stories that I realized early on, I don't need to make anything up. This dude jumped in the pen with a rhino. You know what I mean?
And I reach my hand down over the side. And I go, come on, man. I go, grab my hand. And the rhinos, these guys, by the way, I wish I had a picture of what his face looked like. But you've never seen fear until you've seen someone chased by a rhino. That is a fear that you don't expect to ever unlock. You know what I'm saying? That's deep, dark.
Yeah, it's a good example here. Again, as I've started telling stories, I want to relate to the people that are listening and watching. And so in the story, when I can dip back and talk about something like that kind of fear that we've all either experienced or seen somebody experience, I like the relatable laughs. I want them to be funny, but I also want you and the people listening to be like, oh, I know that guy. I am that guy. I was that guy. That's my favorite type of humor. So that is really what I try to put out there.
He runs, he jumps one foot in the wall, grabs my hand. All of my weight, I just pull, lift him up out of that pen. When I tell you how close it is, dude, I lifted him up. The rhino was so close to him, the rhino ran into the wall. Rhinos don't stop on a dime. You know what I mean? They don't really have brakes, you know what I mean? This dude.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, it drives me crazy just watching this. That double, you know what I mean, is like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. You know what I mean?
Into the wall. My buddy's laying there, out of breath, just not saying anything. I'm laying there, laughing my ass off. I'm like, God, I almost saw you die right now. You're like, your rhino almost split you in two, bro. And we're walking out of the zoo, quiet. He hasn't said a word. And then he looks at me and he goes, hippo, not rhino, hippo. And I go, no dude, not hippo either.
Again, hippo, not rhino, not written, said. Like it was such a natural beginning, middle, end of a story. But I'm going to tell you why I didn't tell it for a long time. It's already a fantastical story, right? There was a while there where I didn't feel like I was a good enough storyteller to tell it. I was not confident. I should have made notes of it in here. But when I say that's the fear I was looking for, it's not like a punchline, but it's an in the moment, because I've described to you and put you in the world that you're there with me, that you're understanding my point of view. That's the laugh. That type of storytelling where it's not, I can't think of a lot of like punchlines. Hippo, not rhino, punchline. But it was more feeling, being there. Oh my God, I can't believe that's happening. And laughing at human emotion and real things that are happening, right? That to me is a different type of storytelling when you have to bring people into the world to get the laugh. And that happened in college. For a long time, whenever I would tell it on stage, I would get maybe a chuckle or two, and I would get a round of applause at the end of the story. I don't want a round of applause. I'll take it if it comes after the laughs. But this is not a rally. It's not a speech. I want the laughter. And so for a while, I didn't feel like I was a good enough storyteller to do that story justice. And I honestly, that especially somebody just asked me the question and just kind of not a story that I tell all the time, that felt exactly how, besides the you know what I means, how I want to tell stories. Very conversational, very natural. And I wish I hadn't posted this so I could do it on my next special. All right, everybody. I hope you had a good time. Man, I love breaking down these stories. I love the comedy nerd aspect. I would love to maybe do one where I answer some of your questions about the joke before I do the video. I'll have to figure out how to make that happen. Thank you for tuning into the channel. Thank you for watching the videos. Super grateful for all of you. ComedianJoshWolf.com for tour dates. Talk to you soon.